When you're in addiction, the biggest line people say is, I'm only hurting myself. I'm not hurting anybody else. I'm only hurting myself. But that's such a lie.
Welcome back to season 3 of the You Grow Girl podcast. I'm your host, Stacey C, and today we are having an important conversation, one that so many people live with quietly. We're talking about addiction, recovery, and what it truly takes to overcome it. Today, we're talking about addiction, but not in just the terms that we're trying to stop or what we're trying to stop. We're talking about who we're becoming on the other side of it. Addiction often shows up during seasons of pain, loss, of stagnation, but recovery is a growth journey. It's about learning to trust yourself again and choosing yourself again. Addiction can carry a lot of shame and misunderstanding, but today's conversation is about honesty, healing, and hope. I am joined by a special guest, Mrs. Lolita Smith. Lolita is a wife of 4 years, a mother of 3, and a proud fur mom to 2 pets, and she has overcome addiction after 6 years into recovery. Through her lived experience, Lolita has become a certified peer recovery specialist and later advanced to a certified alcohol and drug counselor. Lolita uses her professional training and personal journey to support others on their path to healing and recovery. Thank you so much for being here and for willing to have this conversation. So, Lolita, do you want to say hi to the audience?
Hey, how's everybody doing? I hope everybody is doing well and living healthy.
Before we dive in, I want listeners to know that this is a judgment-free space, and whether you're in recovery or struggling right now or supporting someone you love, you belong here. So, just to start, addiction means different things to different people. So, from your perspective and your experience, how do you define addiction?
I would say addiction is something that we know the professional term of something that you crave for or something that you can't, that overpowers you in your mind, your body, your soul, all of those things. But I think it goes a little deeper than that and goes into you just not being able to say no to something and you not being able to identify with what you're feeling, and therefore you search for other things that numb you and that may satisfy you in different ways.
When did you first realize that addiction was more than just a habit or a choice?
When I could no longer say no to it, when it overpowered everything that I believed in, everything that I loved, everything that I stood for. When I no longer knew who I was anymore, my identity was taken. I knew that it was out of control.
That is true. And like you said, addiction can be something that you just crave for, and it can be anything. So I just want to preface this and say that, we're not just talking about drugs. It could be anything. It could be food. It could be alcohol. It could be a lot of different things. You can be addicted
Mhm.
to a lot of different things.
Definitely, definitely.
Do you think that society still misunderstands what addiction really is?
I think so because with I think it's I think it's more based on what you're addicted to how people really view it. You tell someone you're addicted to drugs versus food, maybe somebody would say, "Oh, that's a choice," and maybe the other one's not so much a choice. But I think that a lot of people do think that addiction is a choice and that you can say no when you're ready to say no, but I think it's a lot deeper than that.
I think a lot of people don't realize that addiction often starts with, ways of coping with pain, trauma, and loss. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I think that most people, and especially even females, but we do tend to forget males too, have a lot of trauma that they've dealt with or haven't dealt with that causes them to seek something else to feel numb from that trauma or to feel good through something else that they're looking for. Yeah.
I was just thinking the same thing when you were saying like numb. I was thinking they just want to feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the hardest steps in acknowledging that there is a problem. Can you talk about what that moment looked like for you? And if you don't want to share, at any time you can say, "I'm not comfortable with sharing." Again, because it's a judgment free zone. So would you mind talking about what that looked like for you?
What it looked like for me when What was
Realize it
your
was a
exact
problem.
realized it was a problem?
Or it doesn't have to be you. I'm sorry, it doesn't have to be you. It can also be what it often looks like for people that you work with too.
Okay. Well, for myself, I'm pretty open with I don't think there's I haven't well, I could say I haven't came across a question that I wasn't comfortable with answering. I think because I believe my story is my story and the way I put it out there is the way I want to put it out there and what I'm okay with sharing. I do share and I pretty much want people to understand and not be ashamed of where they come from or what happened to them because it's not something that we don't wake up and say we want to be an addict of anything. You don't
Right.
wake up and well most people anyway don't wake up and say I want to be an addict. I want to be addicted to anything. I want my identity taken from me, or I don't want to be around my children, or I want to lose my children. Things like that we don't wake up and say. But for me, I think the day I had to make the decision to let my son live with my parents, and I'm not going to say I chose drugs over my son, but that's what it looked like to other people. Like, I chose why I couldn't just say no to the drug because I should love him more and things like that. That came up. But for me, it was I no longer knew who I was anymore. And so when I no longer knew who I was, it was just, I didn't know how to turn back from that. So when I didn't know how to turn back from the drug and I didn't know how to let it go and I didn't know which way I was going, left or right, I knew it was out of control, but I still didn't know how to get out of it. Like I felt like it was stronger than me at that time because I was still broken. I hadn't dealt with the traumas that happened to me. I didn't deal with any of those feelings. And because I didn't deal with those, how can I stop something that's making me feel good and helping me feel numb from all those things that hurt me? How can I say no to it if I can't even talk about the things that I was going through?
Right.
Mhm.
I mean, I had no idea what was going on at that time, because that's none of my business either. I'm very much a part of it. It's none of my business. But I will say that to me, listening to you and understand and knowing you and understanding that you did something that was very difficult. And that's what any parent does. We
Mhm.
make difficult decisions sometimes and it don't always make sense to everybody else. But in my opinion, you did what was definitely best for your son at the time. And it was a
Yeah.
hard decision. I'm
Yeah.
sure it was.
It was a hard decision, but at the same time, I knew it was the best decision for him. I had to like put my selfish needs of wanting to be there all the time for him and knowing that it was kind of toxic for him to be around me at that time while I was going through this sickness, knowing that I couldn't offer him, we think because we are feeding them once a day at least or whatever that we're taking care of them. But when you're addicted to something, especially substances, you can't be that 100% mom that you're supposed to be. You just can't. And even if you think you are doing it, you're not. And how can you when something else is taking over you so strongly? So, but it helped having the support of my family and my mom and dad and them willing to take him. They luckily for me, and I know a lot of people don't have this, they never shamed me for it and they never like took me for custody or child support or anything like that because they knew if I'm already broken, how am I gonna do any of this other stuff that you're asking for? But thankfully, they didn't do any of that to me. But I do understand at the same time people that may need to do that because they need the help while they raise someone else's child or whatever. But yeah, I had a lot of support. So I think that helped me make the decision.
Well, that's good. I'm glad that you had that support because, like you said, everybody doesn't always have that.
Yeah.
Was there any resistance or denial at first?
Yeah, of course. I denied that I had a problem for a long time. I hid it from my family. I thought that I was doing good by disguising it. And for a little while, it worked. Like for a little while, nobody knew that I was addicted to. I started with Percocets and Xanax, and nobody knew that I was addicted to those. I was still going to work, so I thought that I was functioning, so I didn't really have a problem. And nobody really knew, so I didn't really think I had a problem. And I thought once I realized I was addicted to it, I did go to a clinic for help, but I still didn't deal with those underlying issues. So it just ended up being a vicious cycle where I continued to get the help from them, but still use on top of it and still couldn't let it go. And then it was just like, yeah, I was in total denial, just thinking I could make it until I couldn't make it no more. Yeah.
What helped you move from awareness to action?
So I started going, you mean like what finally got me clean the very last time?
Yes.
Because I tried several times to get clean, but I never did it for myself. It was always because I was trying to do it for Cody or I was trying to do it for my mom. But when I finally did it for me, and but some traumatic things happened there too that turned me around. I ended up overdosing where Cody found me. I don't know if he ever told you about that, but yeah, the very last time I overdosed, Cody found me. And that was one of the hardest times of my life. And I knew that I could never put him through that again. I knew how much that hurt him. And the words of him telling me that he thought his mom was gone and that he would never see me again broke me, sorry. But I had gotten arrested. My probation officer, when I overdosed, arrested me because he said, "You're gonna end up killing yourself out here." So, he arrested me, and that was probably the best thing he could have done. So, when he arrested me, they gave me the CREST program, and the program was supposed to only be 6 months. I turned it in to 11 months because of my behaviors that came out that needed to come out because I needed some adjusting and I needed some help. So all those things needed to come out. And going to the CREST program, I knew I never wanted to go there again. I hated it. I felt like I was in a time zone that I was never going to come out of. But it also saved my life because during those 11 months, I was able to be without drugs. So my mind got clearer and clearer and clearer every day. And each day that it got more and more clear, I was able to start saying no. And I was able to start healing. And I was able to start talking about those things that hurt me and the trauma that I went through. I was able to talk about my son finding me. I was able to talk about all those things. So, with me being able to do all that, it helped me heal to where when I got out and I was released, I didn't want to go back to any of that other stuff. I didn't want to put my son through anymore. I was tired. I was done. And once again, I had a lot of support. My parents welcomed me back into the house. They gave me a job taking care of my grandmother through Easter seals. I was able to go back to school and not have to pay any bills, because I was living with my parents. But they supported me and that was like one of the best things that could happen to me. Yeah.
But no, I had no idea. Thank
Mhm.
you for being open and sharing that. I really appreciate that.
We don't realize how much when you're in addiction, the biggest line people say is, "I'm only hurting myself. I'm not hurting anybody else. I'm only hurting myself." But that's such a lie. Like, we're hurting everyone that loves us, everyone that cares about us, we are hurting. I mean, my mom, there was once that she told me, I had came to her house one day and she said, "I'm already planning your funeral." And in the moment, I'm like, "What? I'm not dying. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. Like, why would you say that?" But in light now, thinking about it, like I was dying and I was almost dead to her, because I was no longer the daughter that she knew. I was this other person. And To her, every day that she didn't hear from me, she was scared that she was going to get that phone call. So, I was hurting a lot of people around me. And my son, to hear him say that some of the things he said to me, Mom, why can't you get clean for me? I love you. I don't want to lose you. So we are hurting a lot of people that love us.
And I was about to ask you, like, what would you say to someone listening now who knows something isn't right but is afraid to admit it out loud?
Uh, I would say, however you can, build up that courage to ask for help, no matter how that looks. If it is going to your probation officer, if it's going to your parents, if it's going to your child, whoever it is that supports you and is willing to help you, just go for that and surrender. Surrender all that you have, excuse me, to your higher power and to someone that really loves you and supports you and wants to see better in you, because sometimes we don't see what others see in us that we're capable of doing, but you're worth it and you're capable of getting the help. It's right there. You just have to grab it.
And it's great that you said that because that leads us to our next segment about asking for help. So,
Mhm.
addiction can be incredibly isolating. Asking for help sounds simple, but it can feel terrifying. What was that first step like for you?
It was terrifying because I knew by asking for help, I wasn't only asking for help to get off of drugs. It was meant that by me asking for help, I was going to have to deal with all those traumas that hurt me, that I stuffed for so long and I didn't want to talk about and I didn't want to relive, that I knew asking for help was going to bring all those feelings up. And the more you're clean and sober and you're in that right mind, a lot of different emotions come up, a lot of different feelings come up that weren't there for so long and that you felt numb from for so long, that it's scary to think that you're even going to have to discuss any of that. It's scary.
Who was the first person you reached out to?
Well, I would probably say my probation officer, because he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself at that time. And he saw what was going to happen to me if I kept going. And he chose to do something to help me and kind of forced me, but at the same time, it was the best thing that he could have done for me. And I still talk to him to this day because they don't hear so many success stories. So he enjoys hearing, what I'm doing, what I'm up to, what degree I'm going for next, all those things he loves hearing. But I had to tell him that I needed help. But my very first person that I told that I needed help was my God. I surrendered. I asked for that help, for him just to take the taste out of my mouth, to take the hurt out of my heart that I had towards other people that I felt hurt me. All of those things that I had to just, do that and surrender to him.
Amen.
Yeah. That's
I was
my
about to start shouting.
foundation. That's my foundation. My foundation. Some people have like NA, AA, and I feel like that helps. I'm not against it, but it just wasn't the thing for me. My thing was my church and my family and Christ and the God that I knew that loved me and wanted more for me. That was my foundation and my outlet. But everybody, has their own thing.
Right. But so for someone who doesn't know where to start, what are some realistic ways to ask for help without feeling overwhelmed?
I would say start by journaling, maybe journaling down your feelings. Sometimes it's easier to write out how you feel rather than talking it out. And if you're able to give that letter to somebody, or even if it's easier for you to call somebody, but there's no right or wrong way to ask for help. Whatever that looks like for you, do it. The biggest thing is just asking. But however it looks, if it's writing it down, calling someone, texting someone, whatever, going face to face, whatever you have to do to get help, do it.
Right. A lot of recovery conversations focus on stopping the behavior, but not always why it started. How important is that to address the root cause?
It's the most important thing to do because if you don't deal with those root issues, you're going to continue to want to feel numb. And even if I didn't deal with the root issues, however, I got clean and say something else traumatic came along, I wouldn't know how to deal with that. So I would probably, or it would be a higher risk that I would resort to what I know feels good. And what feels good is that drug, or maybe I might get into a different addiction, gambling or shopping or whatever, eating, because I know those things might make me feel good, but it's not as bad as maybe doing drugs. So you'll go into something else that's unhealthy. But if you deal with those underlying issues, it'll better set you up in the future to deal with things that come along. Because life is going to be life, and you're going to have
Yes.
issues. You're going to
Yes.
have issues, and you're still going to go through some hurts. People are people sometimes. You're still going to go through things that hurt you and things that make you feel uncomfortable, but you've got to know how to deal with those things. And if you can't deal with the beginning issues that hurt you, you're not going to be able to deal with the future things that you go through.
Right. Was there a moment when you realized that you were really trying to numb or escape? But you actually talked about that earlier. You said that
Hmm.
you were trying to numb. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to revisit that if you don't want to. So, but was that a moment where you felt like you realized you were numbing?
Yeah. I knew the whole time that I was numbing my feelings. I knew the whole time why I was doing drugs, but I just didn't know how to stop numbing those things. I think that was the biggest thing for me is I just didn't know how to stop numbing those things, and I didn't know. I felt like I just was doing a group today with my clients, and I told them when I was in my addiction, I felt like I was either going to die in my addiction, I was going to be an addict for the rest of my life, or I was going to be in jail for something crazy. I could not see myself while I was in my addiction. I could not see myself any other way. And I just couldn't see past it because it took everything from me. And I just thought that this was my life now. This is it is. And I didn't want to deal with that hurt and that pain. So I was going to continue covering it up and covering it up and numbing and numbing and numbing until there was nothing that was it was almost like a death sentence, you know? I basically made a death sentence for myself. Basically, yeah.
What advice would you give someone who's scared to look at the pain underneath their addiction?
Would say it's not going to be easy, but it's worth it. It's not going to be easy, and there's going to be a lot of different emotions that come up. There's going to be laughter, there's going to be tears, there's going to be screaming. It's going to be all kinds of different emotions, but they're healthy emotions. And to keep that in the back of your mind that these feelings are healthy, they're normal, and just continue to allow yourself to feel again, because the more you do that, the more you'll be able to heal and you'll be able to, grow within yourself.
Right. I think that is great advice for letting someone know what is really going to happen. Sometimes people say, you should do A, B, and C, but for you to really put it real like that, like you will feel laughter, you will feel some joy, you will feel some pain, you will cry. That really like lets someone know that this is really what you will experience, but it's worth it.
Right. Cause there's no layout or book that's gonna tell you what it's gonna look like for you. Cause everybody's different. Everybody has different traumas. Everybody's hiding something differently or feeling something differently, and people deal with things differently. So where, my sister, when she's upset, she laughs. Or, she hides it by a bunch of sarcasm and stuff like that. But we know because we're her family that she's really hurting inside, because even when I got clean, it was hard for our relationship because she still was hurting and because I wasn't there for her either. And, so there's no directions that's going to tell you what's going to happen through your journey of healing, or who you're going to have to make amends with or, any of that. So you're just going to have to take it one day at a time, one step at a time, and deal with it as it comes.
Right. Once the substance or behavior is removed, there's often a big empty space. How did you or how did people, like anybody that you helped, how did they learn to fill that space when in healthier words?
So it's crazy. Like you're asking me questions that I just did like these groups on with my client. So you have to find a purpose, number one. You have to find a purpose that something you love, like even if it's a hobby that you do, even because not everybody is meant to go into the addiction field and work, not everybody is meant to do whatever with the addiction field. So you have to find other things that bring you happiness too. On the outside of doing what I do with my clients, I thrift and I resell things. And that's kind of like my hustle. So it gives me that same feeling in the endorphins that I was feeling when I was using, but in a different, healthier way. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I enjoy doing those things. So it builds that sense of purpose, like I'm doing something I really enjoy. It gives me that umph, that feeling of excitement every time something sells and I make the money off of it and the profit. Like I just enjoy it. So you have to find something that you enjoy doing or something that brings enjoyment to you that feeds that same receptor.
Okay. What coping skills actually work for you and not the ones that just sounded good?
Okay, so my higher power was one, so prayer. But sometimes I had to lock myself in a room and just scream. Sometimes I had to take a hot bath, meditate. There's a lot of different things you can do outside of the box of someone telling you to journal and, write out your feelings and write a card or whatever. But there's different things that also helped me when I was healing from some of my trauma. I wrote a letter to the people that hurt me. And, I was able to throw that letter away. So there's different things that my counselor had me do that was helped me. But I think that everyone's road and coping is going to be a little different depending on what you've been through, will depend on some of the different things you can do that help you. Because even like coming off of the MATs, I had to cope with that and understand that I still didn't need a substance to get me through. So there was a lot of different things that I had to do to cope to get through different steps of my recovery.
Were there any tools that surprised you? You did talk about some things that, I call self-care, like taking a bath or
Mhm.
um, writing. I've actually written a letter to people,
Yeah.
telling them how they hurt me as well. So I know that was
Mhm.
therapeutic for myself as well. But were there any particular tools that surprised you that worked?
I wrote, so somebody passed away is one of my traumas that happened. And I wrote him a letter saying how I thought that I kind of had survivor's guilt with some of it that happened, make a long story short. So I actually wrote myself back what I thought he would say to me today. And it helped me because, I knew that person. So I kind of thought I knew how he would talk to me or like what I felt he would say to me. And it actually made me feel a lot better. It almost made me feel like you're forgiven, like you're not, there's no reason for you to have survivor's guilt. And, but yeah, it surprised me that that actually worked because I was like, what? When my counselor asked me to I said,
So
"But it's not really me, like, it's not him. How do I know what he's gonna say to me?" But it's just my thought of what I think he would say to me, and it still made me feel a lot better. So it was doing that was different for me. I thought that was really neat to do.
how do you help people learn to sit with their discomfort instead of running from it?
Just making them sit with it in silence. Sometimes you just have to sit in silence. After you let something out, like, say we're in a session and you tell me something that hurt you or something you're upset about, just sitting in it for a few minutes to regroup, rethink your feelings, think about what you are feeling at that moment, and then taking that next step to continue talking about it. but sometimes you just have to sit in silence.
Good advice. I've actually heard that because I go to therapy myself and I've talked about it before. But I've actually heard my therapist say that sometimes
Yeah,
to me about certain situations. You have to just sit in it. And I'm like,
yeah.
okay,
You do though. Sometimes you do. Like, sometimes you have to sit in it and just be like, "Why am I mad? Like,
right.
why am I mad at this person?" And you just sit there and think and sit in your silence. And then you come to think, like, well, I guess I'm not really mad at them. It's more my stuff and something I'm upset about within me. And you end up realizing some things that you may not have realized if you just kept blurting out everything and talking and saying everything and yelling and whatever. If you just sit in it for a few minutes and take it all in, you can sometimes come to a better understanding.
That is so true. Let's talk about relapse because it's real and it's often misunderstood. What do
Hmm.
you wish people knew about relapse and recovery?
Hate, I'm not going to say hate. I don't hate. Don't hate nobody. Don't hate nothing. But I dislike people to say that relapse is going to happen as part of recovery, because I say that to say, yes, it could happen, but it doesn't have to happen. Like, there is a lot of people that it happens to, and that's okay. You relapse, you pick yourself back up, and you know, go back at being clean and doing your steps or going to your higher power, whatever you have to do, dust yourself off and keep going. However, I don't believe that you necessarily have to relapse. Like, some people relapse and are like, well, it's part of recovery and it's going to happen anyway. So it's okay if I use today or eat this chocolate cake today. It's part of recovery. I'm going to relapse. It doesn't have to be a part of your recovery. If you have a feeling that you're going to relapse, there's things in place to deal with that before the relapse even happens. Because you're going to relapse before you relapse. You relapse in your head first and in your mind first. You already are saying it in your mind, oh, I'm going to eat this. I want this chocolate cake. I see the chocolate cake and I want it, but you're not supposed to eat chocolate cake, but then you do it. So you've already thought about it. So when I thought about it, that's when I should have picked up the phone and said, "Hey, Stacy, this chocolate cake looks really good." And that's when hopefully you'll say, "But you don't need it. And let's talk about something else." And maybe you'll put me on talking about, anything else, change the subject. And now I'm not thinking about that chocolate cake anymore. You know what I mean? So
Right.
there's steps to take. But if you do relapse, it's okay. It's okay if you relapse, and just don't sit in that relapse though. Don't sit in it, because the longer you sit in it, the more you'll get lost and lost and lost and lost. And it's harder to get back out. But if you realize your relapse and continue to get the help you need, it will work out. But you have
Right.
to fight for it. You got to keep, every day is a challenge. Just because I have 6 years clean doesn't mean that things don't cross my mind sometimes, or um I might take a certain route to the store and I see somebody and, oh yeah, I used to get high with that person, and think, because it wasn't always bad.
Hmm.
Sometimes I had fun, but the bad things outweighed the fun, but sometimes I had fun. So sometimes those fun memories come up in my mind, but I still have to know what to do with those things, and to know what to do with when I have those thoughts, know how to call my mom and talk to her about it, or sit for a minute and think about, well, why am I having this thought? Sometimes I have to make sure I go a different route to the store, or when I know that I'm going to run into this person, I have to take a different route. So there's a lot of different things that you can do to prevent relapse. But if it
Right.
does happen, just continue to fight and continue to get the help you need. Don't give
Well,
up.
what's the difference between guilt that helps growth and shame that keeps people stuck?
Guilt that
Helps
helps
growth.
or helps growth. I think facing your guilt, and working through your guilt, forgiving yourself. That's a big thing, is that I had to work on, was forgiving myself for not being there for my son when he probably needed me the most. Forgiving myself for not being that daughter that my mom needed. Forgiving myself for not being that sister that my sister needed. just and forgiving myself for hurting myself the way I did. Just being able to forgive myself was one of the hardest things to deal with because I had a lot of guilt and a lot of shame. However, it was important that I forgave myself because if I didn't forgive myself, there wasn't really no true healing there. So, if you don't deal with forgiveness and understand too that everybody may not forgive you,
Hmm.
and that's okay. You may go and try to make amends with somebody and they may not be ready or they may not want to accept it, but that's their stuff. You have to be okay with that. You have to be okay that some people just aren't there yet and they may never be, but you're where you're at. You're still okay and it may still hurt, but you can better deal with it when you know that you've made some good decisions.
And for someone listening who has relapsed recently, what would you want them to hear right now?
That you're worth it to get the help that you need. You're worth it to live. And you are loved by many, many people. And something that you don't see in yourself, other people see, but it's time that you see it in yourself.
As we wrap up today, I want to ask you, what does recovery mean to you today?
Recovery today means to me being healed, loving myself, forgiving myself, enjoying life. I enjoy life today. I enjoy my son calling me and FaceTiming me and talking to me and getting on my nerves. I enjoy building the memories that I can build today with my family. It's just the love and support that I feel every day, and it's also the things that I'm able to give back to others that was given to me. I had someone tell me today that them seeing me when they came to jail felt like hope. Not everybody feels that when they come to prison, but because they saw me and what I was doing, it gave them hope that they could do the same thing. So being able to be that hope for someone else helps me in my recovery and is recovery for me. Yeah.
What message of hope would you like to share with someone who feels like addiction has taken everything from them?
You may not get everything back, but everything that's meant for you to get back, you will get back. And it's not over. Yeah, it's not over. It's not over for you. Don't think that it's over because it's not over until he says it's over.
That's so
So
true. That is so
don't
true.
give up on yourself. There's people out there rooting for you.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your honesty and vulnerability today. Conversations like this save lives because they remind
Yeah.
people that they are not alone. If you're listening and struggling, please know this: recovery is possible. You are worthy of help, and asking for support is a strength, not a failure. Thank you for being here, Lolita. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. And thank you to everyone out there for listening. Can you tell the audience where they can find you?
I'm on Facebook. I believe it's L Renee on there. On Facebook, I can be reached. And also I do my thrifting and selling on Poshmark, Depop, eBay, and Macari under Thrifty Girl. And you're more than welcome to shop with me. And you're more than welcome to send me a message if you need any help or encouragement or just need a listening ear. I'm always here to help anybody that I can.
Okay. And I will make sure to have all your information in the notes.
Yes.
So I want the audience to please share in the comments the ways that you have overcome addiction. I hope that you have enjoyed season 3. This is the first episode of season
Nice.
3 of You Grow Girl podcast. And I'm your host, Stacey C. Please do not forget to subscribe, share, like, and comment. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep going and make time to see